Okay, so in with my one-to-one client Lee today, who's just scaled from 7K per month to plus 20K per month. We're in today for a session which is going to be taking his business to the next level. We're looking how he can scale his business, which is currently at plus 20K per month to over 50K per month. So I'll hand it over to Lee. He has a few questions to ask in terms of like what he can be doing next to really drive his business forward to the next level.
Yeah, so obviously over the last few months, the main focus for us has been truly organic reach over Instagram, mainly as a platform. And I think for me, going into the next stage of, right, how do we take this from 20K to 50K? Something we briefly touched on before was ads and being a bit more specific. So if we were to look at that now from the point I am here, which is generating over 20K, what would be the next steps in terms of the ads and how would we structure that?
Yeah, 100%. I think with ads, I think a lot of things have changed in the last few years a lot. So what you see online all the time now is just people giving offers. And I think people are just over it, and people will just see you kind of pitching something on an ad and they just won't really have trust in you. So my point of view is, how can we get strangers to build trust in you and you kind of get your authority across to them? So this is what I call a credibility funnel. So this is kind of going to be the next step for you. One benefit of this as well, we don't actually need a huge amount of ad spend to do it, which kind of suits you well for the position we're in at the moment. So step one of this is going to be boosting a reel. So with the reel, few important things to touch on here. We want to make sure that, as I said, we're not actually giving an offer. This isn't a sales pitch. This is you actually giving some information and giving some like really in-depth value, because the goal of this reel is for strangers who don't know you yet to see it and say, okay, that's a coach who's actually speaking to me and they're giving me value. So what's happened here? You're actually becoming more credible to them. They've built trust in you, they've built authority, and the goal off the back of this is that they'll just engage with your stuff and hopefully drop you a follow. So boosting reel to gain a follow is essentially going to be the goal with this. Then obviously you have lead gen team in your account, so they can be reaching out to them. You might be nurturing them in a conversation. Some people might see your results and they want to get booked in with a call with you straight away, which is amazing. But what we can do to add to this is kind of step two of this credibility funnel, which I call a retargeting ad. So with a retargeting ad, what we're going to be looking for here is not just that strangers see it, but only people who engage in your stuff will see it. So if we do something like a retargeting ad, what that's going to do is anyone who's engaged with your profile, you can pick a timeline on it. I usually say like a year. So retargeting ad will be sent to anyone who's engaged with your profile for the last year. So the difference here is when we're boosting a reel, as I said, all we want to do is give value because these people don't know you yet. But with the retargeting ad, these people know you already, they've engaged with your stuff. So what we can do is actually give them something that's a bit more direct. So what I think works well here is doing this as like a messenger ad and giving a free training. So you know it yourself, from us to get plus 20K per month, what do we need? A lot of conversations in the DMs. So this retargeting ad is essentially going to give us an opportunity to get more of them. So I would set up a retargeting ad. Let's say this is another reel of you, but the difference with this one is that you're going to be offering something for free. So this is going to be for like a free guide, and it's a video of you saying DM for the free guide. So now what's going to happen is, let's just think of a complete stranger up here. They've never seen your stuff before. How do we grab their attention? They're getting offers left, right, and center, so that's not going to do it. So what we can do, as I said, boost the reel, give value, get someone to drop you a follow, and now they've built some trust. They're seeing your page, they're seeing your results, and they get this retargeting ad from you, which is you offering something for free. So even better. Now they'll drop you a message. Your VA setter will take over in the DMs, and that conversation is naturally going to move forward. So my perspective to you, you've built over 20K per month just from Instagram. We can continue scaling that through ads, getting more people on your page, getting more people in your DMs. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that sounds perfect.
Any questions with that?
No, so just in regards to the type of reels that you're boosting, would you ever look at having a specific strategy in terms of, okay, should I have mapped out a content sort of strategy that's going to, do you ever go that specific, or is it a case of just, see what works? Like, for example, if I had a glute reel that I wanted to boost, and then the free guide could be giving away my top 3 tips to grow your glutes, what would you say in regards to the type of content that you're going to push?
Yeah, really, really good question. So the boosting reel, I actually would have a framework for it. So how I would do the framework, the start of it's going to be like actually the hook in terms of like the people you want to speak to. So for me, for example, it may be like, hey, if you're an online coach looking to scale to 50K per month, then this advice is for you. So if you're listening to that, you didn't know me, you see that and you're like, fuck yeah, I want to listen, I want to see what that is. So the first thing is going to be the hook, speaking to the audience you want. So like what you said about glutes, this could be like, are you a female who struggling to build their glutes and have been trying for years? Do you know, anyone who's in that pain point is going to listen. So hook is going to be about the ideal client. Then what I would say, secondly, it's going to be the actual value segment of it. And what I think you need to do for this is actually hone in maybe on one specific area. Because I think what we're seeing a lot on Instagram now is people give their like 5 tips, and it's all quite surface level and things they've heard before. So what I would try to get you to think about is there something I could talk about in glutes specifically, which I actually haven't, like using your physio background, like is there something around kind of training mechanics that no one else really talks about? They kind of give like the airy fairy stuff like calorie surplus, train harder, and you're like, no, I'm going to give them like some value like they haven't heard before. So I would kind of give like one piece of like really good value that really kind of shows you off. And then finally, it will just be the call to action. So I would say at the end, if you want more content like this in terms of growing your glutes, then just drop me a follow. So call to action will be actually to drop a follow. And then I think you made a very good point there, because you said, should the free training be linked? And I think absolutely, like that's going to add to things hugely. So we'll keep using glutes as an example. If you use the reel giving value, if you're a female who's struggling to grow your glutes, this advice is for you. Go really in depth with one piece of value. If you're interested in more content like this, drop me a follow, call to action. Now they're following you. And now guess what's going to happen? They've built trust in Lee. And now they're going to see a retargeting ad with Lee pop up, offering a free training about glutes. They jump in your DMs, your VA or setter there, having a conversation with them. And you know yourself, there's going to be meaningful conversations and calls booked off the back of that.
And is that going to be the main goal? Book calls. So it's really just how you can create better quality lead with stronger levels of trust and just trying to get them on a call. So the free guide necessarily, would you like what does a free guide look like? Is that me giving a free training plan? Is that me giving a PDF? What way would you do a free guide if I was going to do it? Because I think for me, naturally, this is my next step to do this sort of stuff that I haven't really done at all.
100%. So to your first point in terms of like the goal from it, the way I see ads, especially in the fitness space at the moment, and especially when we don't have a massive amount of budget, I see like your Instagram as like the landing page for you essentially. So we could we run an ad which goes to landing page, they book in for a call. To me, you'll have a worse quality lead. You might have not built a huge relationship before them because they might be going from ads to book a link. With this kind of process, what we get, yes, the initial aim isn't booking a call. We're only getting a follow, and that's followed by a free guide. But you know from yourself how I've got to plus 20K per month has literally been having more combos in my DMs, people building trust in me. So could I just amplify that even more and actually put some money behind it where all these conversations are coming, and it's a process I know works for me. So it's like, instead of me trying a process I don't know work, let's look at the one that works and how can I actually amplify that up. So that would be the point to that. With the free guide, really good question. So what I would say with the free guide, where I think people can go wrong is nearly giving too much away. Believe it or not, because I think it's even happened to me in the past. It's probably happened to you before. You get like an insanely detailed document from someone, and you're like, "This looks sick." I'll like look at it some other time, and you never look at it. So the way I would look at it is, let's say if you gave like a hugely detailed glute ebook, people would be like, "Wow, that's amazing." Probably wouldn't read through it, or you might have a few to do it, or they say they will in a few weeks. Let's say if you kind of strip that right back down, and you gave someone like 3 glute workouts to try over like the next few weeks in their sessions, that's something they're going to do. Like, people love a workout, and it's not a huge amount of value, albeit, but if someone goes into the gym, gets an insane glute pump from it, they've got a good response from something you've given them. So like, they're like, fuck, like Lee knows how to really like program glutes and put that together. So that's the way I'd see that in terms of free guide. Even just for reference, like for Accomplish, we built our Facebook group from 1,000 to 12,000, and it was off the back of a glute guide, which essentially had a video of me explaining through a glute workout with, I think, like 2 workouts, one gym one and one home one, and no one ever said like, "Oh, that's not enough." People are like, "Oh, this is great, thank you." So my point on that is keep it simple and give someone like an actionable thing they can do.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But to your point, it's people just want quick, easy convenience. They don't want to read a 12-page PDF that looks, amazing.
Yeah, 100%.
They want something that's like, oh, I can just go in the gym tomorrow and try this.
100%. And sometimes I think as well, like actually keeping it basic in terms of like, do you know, if someone a 20-page thing that's over fancy, like really designed, okay, it looks good, but again, maybe that kind of shows more like the sales element to it. Do you know, if you keep something really stripped back, just give them a few things that they can actually do, simple, effective, and kind of does what you need.
On the point of boosting a reel, I think a relevant thing to talk about will be to who and to where. and how?
Very good question. Very good question. Okay, so in terms of audience, okay, so where is like, would you say, I know obviously you're in Dubai now, would you say like Dubai, Ireland is like most of your clients? Is it mainly still Ireland? Are you getting kind of other countries coming
I
in?
have at the minute, some my clientele is UK, Ireland, Australia, Dubai,
Okay, UK, Ireland.
and I have a couple in Canada.
And would you say with the Australia and Canada, was it like people who?
It's Irish people that
Irish
live
people
there.
in-
So it's not
cool.
necessarily
Yeah.
Australians, Canadians, it's Irish
Yeah,
people
I
that
get you.
just live there.
Okay, cool. Okay, so with audience, the first thing I would do is obviously gender wise I think gender specific can be good. So if we're doing a glute guide, obviously female is going to be the first thing here. Secondly is going to be age range. So for me, for age, I know some people go a bit older. Like from experience with my own fitness business, I've seen like 25 plus as okay. So I'm not sure if you're in a point where like there's kind of like an age bracket you'd say. Usually when I'm running ads, I do something like if I was you in this case, I do something like 25 to 50. Could go older, but I usually think that's kind of like a nice number in terms of people from 25 above should start having money where they at least could afford maybe like a subscription. And again, you could extend past 50, but I think in around there, 50, 55 is kind of like a good number to be aiming for. Then in terms of countries, one, I think you can definitely move into new markets, but I think it is good just to amplify and increase like the current markets. So for you, I would be looking for the initial boosted reel. I definitely do Ireland. The UK market, I don't think it's great at the moment, so I'd probably stay away. I do Ireland, Dubai, and Oz. So I'd actually kind of do the areas you have already. And then the one other area I'd potentially look at would be like America for you. I think if you could get into America with how good you are at selling, I could think this could be like a huge step for you in terms of moving the business forward. But so that's something I keep in a bit more long term. For now, I would like these are the three areas I currently have clients. They're all kind of good markets, so I'd actually look to go there again. So I think, for example, let's say if you went completely away from that and you're like, hey, I have clients in Ireland, Dubai, I'm just going to run ads to America. I think you could actually notice from experience like a negative knock on. Funnily enough, it will be a trust thing. So the fact that people hear the Irish accent, even if they don't know you, they'll trust in you more. The fact they may see you in the background, you're in Dubai, they don't know you, but they'll trust in you more. So I think keeping a point of reference to your current kind of client base is really important. And then in terms of interest, you can be clever in terms of how you do it. So there's a few things to look at for interest. Okay, so two ways we're looking at it. One, we want to make sure that the people are seeing it are actually interested in what we do. To be fair, Facebook have got quite better with the algorithm where they will kind of show it to people. So this has actually got less important because Instagram's got so good, but I think it's still important. So I know there's things that you could put it in like hourglass workout. So on your search, this is going to be something. So hourglass workout, basically anyone who's interested in like an hourglass shape as a female has seen this. So you do that. Probably know they're interested in glutes. You could do bodybuilding. You can obviously do fitness. So that will be kind of taking care of the interest in glutes. Secondly, if we're looking at how can we actually ensure that we can have a better quality of lead, there's a few things you can do. You can type in first class travel. You can type in for like executives to see it. So when you're on the Facebook Ads Manager, maybe it won't show you as much detail just through Instagram, but we can move over to Ads Manager. When you want to interest, you can do first class travel, executive seeing it. Even when you start doing America, you can do like zip codes. So zip codes are places that have the top 5% of income and stuff like that. So basically, just to summarize that, when we're looking at interest, I'd be looking at one, people who are actually interested in what you're giving, but then two, can we actually make the leads better by first class travel, by putting in Range Rover, Evoque for females, like, things like that.
In terms of how much you spend on it,
yeah, good question.
Should you be like, just throwing down whatever? Is it a case of you should be a little bit more meticulous with like the ad spend, looking at cost per profile visit? I've seen that before. I don't really know what that means.
Yeah, very good question. Okay, so the way I would look at it for you, I would actually just start with something easy enough, like £10 a day. So that's low, but I think it's a good place to start because we can test it at £10 and see what the response is. If you know, geez, I'm getting really good followers onto the page, like all kind of like people who look like they could be good clients, then we know we could actually like push that up. So firstly, for the boosted reel, I would do something like, so I do something like 10 per day. And then what I would do from that, I would actually kind of assess and see how it gets on. If you're noticing like you're getting a really good return, I would be looking to push that maybe to like 25 per day. If you find we're at 25 per day and it's still doing good, the one I wouldn't say downside with this, but the one thing with a boosted reel is the creative doesn't stay. It's not something that will go forever. So sometimes you could boost an ad with it's like a landing page and stuff, and you find like it can just be something that converts and converts and converts. From my experience, when we're boosting reels, the performance does go down. So I'd be keeping an eye on it after a few weeks if things have stopped, and then I'd be changing the creative. But let's say if you built it up to 25 per day and you were seeing the return you wanted, instead of still boosting this reel, I would probably add in a second reel. So I'd probably look, if you wanted to increase ad spend towards that, can I actually boost something else and do that alongside it? So that's what I'd be looking at. Then you asked a really good question in terms of like, how do I actually know how much to do? Am I getting a return from it, etc.? So I would literally start tracking the people who are following your page that month, and when we're running the retargeting ad, the people that are DMing you, and actually see has any of them converted into clients. So let's just, for argument's sake, say for a boosted reel spend, we did 10 per day for the month. So it's like 300 per month. And then for the retargeting ad, that's only going out to audience that knows you. So that can be quite a low spend. I'd say like £5 to £10. We can say like, we can say £5. Retargeting 5. So if we do that by 30, like that's going to be 150. So let's say overall 300 spend, 150 spend. So we're doing about like 450 total for your first month, like so quite low, but that's going to give you a good test in the water. So then if we're actually tracking people properly, the people coming through to the page, the people coming into the DMs, let's say if you sold 2 people, if you sold one person in, let's say 2 people in full for 1,200 each. So we've done 1,200 by 2. So you've made 2,400. So I'd literally be like, okay, that ads for the month has made me 2,400, got in 2 clients at 1,200, and the spend there is 450. So this gives you so much information that you can be like, if I can keep pushing this, I'll keep getting this in return. So you could say the next month, I want to drive, I know this system is working, I know this funnel is working for me with the lead gen I have in place, with like the conversation off the free guide, how the messaging is going, how obviously the closing is going. So you may say, I want to up this to 900 the next month, and if things kind of go out correctly, that means the return on the back end should be about 4,800. So that can be like the thing with ads is, if you get a system that works, when you put more in, you should be getting more out. So if we find a system here that just works and we just know it works, the more you put in, the more you're going to get out on the back end. So for you, like, we're just going in, it's not something we have to throw a huge amount of money at. I wouldn't recommend it. So like this number, it is quite low, but I think it's a good place to start. And I think that's going to give you a lot of information off the first month. If we know it works, you could drive this number up as much as you want on the back end.
Yeah. Sounds good. So let's just say, for example, right, I'm at a point now where the business is generating 20K months, which means that the client base is sitting in a pretty good position in terms of the amount of people I'm coaching.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I hear a lot of people speaking about, and especially particularly when your client base is increasing in size, is price increase.
Yes.
And that's something that I've been a bit resistant to the idea of in the past.
Yeah.
But I know from discussing with you and around how little objections I get and how many people that sign up.
Yeah.
Like, what would be your advice for me in terms of, okay, the next steps from a pricing point of view and from a sales point of view to expand the business?
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so when we're looking at prices, especially in Lee's case, so Lee was selling about a 6-month program for about like 1,200. So 1,200 for about like 6 months. And his closing rate at this was like incredible, like pretty much kind of closing everyone he had on the call. We kind of knew by the numbers Lee wanted to make, he was kind of comfortable around this mark. So could have we increased prices? We could have. But I think at the point, Lee was really, really happy in terms of the return he was getting off this. So that was kind of an understanding as to why we had it at 1,200 for the 6 months. In terms of you moving forward, I think a few things here, Lee. I think one thing to take into account, which is going to give you so much more leverage, is when we get a coach on board, which I know we'll get to, this gives you a lot more power on a call to increase your prices. Because what you've been doing so far is, on a sales call, it's been I'll help you do this, I help you do this. When that becomes we, that's powerful. And it's like, we're going to help you do this, we're going to help you do this. And now all of a sudden people see you as even more of an authority, because there's a chance they'll work with you, but there may be a chance they just work with your coach. So this gives you a point of view where you can be like, okay, you know, it's 1,200 for 6 months, but if you want to work with me personally, it's 2K, let's say, for argument's sake. So that's one thing for you to take into account. The opportunity you're going to have to increase prices with someone, a success coach below you, is going to help a lot. What I would say for you in terms of like moving forward from a price point of view, I suppose there's 2 ways we can look at it. So let's say if you're really comfortable with the 1,200 and you're like, Con, like, I just I can just ring off 1200 really, really good, and it just flows well. Don't really want to go past it because I feel it's a sweet number. All I'd say to you then is like, okay, let's do this. 1200 for 5 months. 12. Then you get good at selling that. You sell a few, and we're like, hey. And then we do 1200 for 4 months. So now this was 1200 for 6 months, averaging 200 a month. Then this is 1200 for 4 months, averaging 300 per month. So my point to you there is, if you really like the number 1200, you don't have to necessarily increase that. Just reduce the amount of time someone can work with you for 1200, and that increases how much they pay you per month. So my point to that, let's say if we're usually upselling 1200 for 6 months, around month 4, month 5 to extend for another 6 months, now that's happening maybe 8 weeks in. So you get good at selling 1200 for 4 months, 8 weeks, 10 weeks into that, they're extending with you for another 4 months. So now you could be at a point 3 months into program, and people have given you over 2000, maybe 2400 for 8 months. And in this scenario, you may have only collected 1200. So I think that's actually an important thing that I don't think a lot of people think about. It's like, you don't necessarily have to increase the price. Like we could just drop the time commitment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so almost for me it would change my perception of my price point, rather than making it, oh, I'm charging too expensive, I'm charging the same but just for a lesser period of time.
Exactly.
So make it a little bit easier, because I find like the resistance is from me internally to say, oh, is that too expensive for someone, and to really get behind your price point and believing that's, is that fair. But reducing the timeline for it would make it easier rather than increasing on the other end. So that actually makes a lot of sense.
So that would be one. And that even like people I work with, some people say like when they feel they go over 1000, they feel like they lose someone. So like, do you know, if you're selling like a 997, so again, okay, let's not go above 1000, but let's make a 997 for 3 months and kind of keep dropping that down. So then to another point in terms of like you being able to charge more, I think, to be honest, for your results, for the coach that you are, for the service that you give, I think you could be charging definitely 1500 plus. I even think kind of like around the 1800 mark. So I think for you, as the next step, could be trying for 1800 for 6 months. I think what's important for us to discuss is a few things. I know a feeling you would have, because it's something you've mentioned to me before, and it's similar to a lot of people. Oh, I have this call today and I just love to get him in. So I could go 80, I could go for the 1800, but I know I'll probably get into 1200, and that's a thought we can have. So what I would say to you there is your ability to downsell is going to be really, really important, because I can help you pitch an 1800 for 6 months, but still ensure you don't lose a sale. So what people do wrong sometimes, Lee, is that you'll say 1800 for 6 months. They'll say like, oh, that's too expensive. And you'll be like, oh, like, can you do this? Can you do this? And you just lose them completely because you just start throwing numbers. So I'll just talk to you about like quickly, like a downsell process you can do, which ensures you get the sale. So obviously there may be, sometimes when people say it's expensive, it may be a belief issue. So like they have the money, but they just think it's expensive for the thing. So let's kind of avoid that for now. Let's say if it's legitimately too expensive and they don't have the money. So first we want to isolate the objection. So that's you saying, okay, no stress, like definitely understand. Is it anything but the price stopping you from moving forward? So they'll say, no, it's just the price. Okay, we've isolated, it's just price. Then from there, you can say, okay, so just so I'm correct, if I can actually sort out the price with you, it's something you're happy to move forward with. And they'll say, yes, I'd be happy to move forward. So that's called first tie down. Then what we want to do from there, after we get a tie down from them, is instead of you saying, I can do this, and saying, okay, just so I get an understanding of your situation, can you let me know kind of like cash on hand or money you have available to invest? So actually asking them money to invest. So this is kind of keeping you in power, where you can say like, you know, either I'm going to do it or I'm not. So let's say you've done 1800 for 6 months. Let's say if someone says to you 400, so they have 400 to invest. Just before you go into anything, you can be like, okay, look, so usually it's 1800 for 6 months to come work with me. I can make a payment plan and work with the 400, but for me to do that, it's something you'd have to move forward with today. Is that fair? So what you've done there is you actually haven't given them an offer yet. You've said, look, 400 I can make work, but it's something you have to kind of move forward with today. And that question at the end is important. Is that fair? Because it is fair. Of course it's fair. So it's you getting the point across that you're going to do something for them, but it's something they're good to move with. So that kind of gets a commitment from them. So once we've done that, they say, yeah, I'd be happy to move forward, and be like, okay, cool. So what I could do, we could do 400 down from month 1, and then we could do 300 per month from month 2 to 6. So that's actually going to work out at like 1900 across the 6 months. So you've taken the initial 400 that they have to invest, and then you've put them on a monthly of 300 per month after that. So, okay, you're getting a higher monthly now, 1, But two, I think an important thing is when you'll never get if you don't pitch. So you continually doing this, you will just have people say yes. So you will get the 1800s in. But when you don't, you know how I can actually downsell them and get them on a payment plan. And just one thing to add with that, I would have a price for you where you would say, this is a number I won't go below. So like you'll get on a call, maybe even when you have a coach on board, and you may say like, look, 250 a month is like the least we take, or 200 a month is the least we take. I think that number will change for you when you have someone else in, because you won't be doing the work. So it might be a number you keep a bit higher now, but when you have a coach under, it will still make sense from margin perspective. So I would kind of have a number where you're like, okay, like nothing less than 200 per month. So if someone says 150 to you, you just say like, unfortunately, it starts from 200. If they say 200, it could be something that you'd work out for them and like, you know, like, we'll keep this between us. And the only way I look at that 200 payment is just, this is money we could put back into ads. So it's like, okay, 200, it's not great, it's not going to make a huge difference, but it's someone we can get a result with, someone I can potentially give to my coach when that day comes. But I can actually put that 200 into ads so I can get a lead who can pay me the 1800. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Anything I didn't touch on that you're unsure of with that?
No, I think, like you said, it's a good way to look at it from it's flipping that perception of increasing price. You could, number one, you could just change the duration of the service.
Yeah.
Then it doesn't feel any different. You don't feel like you're charging more. But even at that point of bringing the price point above, being able to downsell it to make it feasible for someone to commit if they can't afford an upfront payment. I've said this to you from day one. Like I see myself running the team, being head of the operation, taking on that CEO role eventually. But where does that start now in terms of where do I go from here with a coach? What should I be looking at? What are the key kind of elements to say right now is the right time?
Yes.
I think that's the biggest question is ultimately when is the right time to bring on someone?
Okay, perfect. So I think for you, from a coaching perspective, like the way I would look at it, because I know you love the coaching aspect, and for you, I know you have a dream, not just building a big team, but like actually coaching a lot of people yourself. So what I would say to that for you is you'll probably never feel like it's a fully right time. Like there'll be a point of view that's like, I can almost like take these people on myself. And I know you have a lot of pride in your service in terms of, you know, I kind of want to work with them because I know the results I can get. I think when you can drop that emotional side and kind of see in a way of, like I had to see it when my business is, I want to be impacting double the amount of people. And I know I can't like do this myself.
Yeah.
And I know as well when it comes to impact and fitness and us being helping people, I would even see it from a point of view of like this coach you take on, you could be changing their life and hopefully you will. So I'd say like, Jesus, like I don't even have the opportunity now to transform my coach's life, or my client's life, sorry. I now have the potential to transform this individual, like working inside my business, who's maybe providing for their family, etc. So I think just mentally getting yourself around that, I think is like the important first step. Secondly, when it comes to like hiring a coach, what I would look at for you is when you feel when you almost feel, this may sound wrong, but it's the truth, when you feel there's a bit of resentment in you doing client work because you think it's taking away from the business growing. So let's say if you have a day and you're just like overwhelmed, you just have so much on, and you know you're not going to giving maybe the full list of the messaging, you haven't had a chance to review the ads, your calendar's short in terms of sales calls, and you're like, hey, like the business isn't really moving and it's because I'm doing so much to coaching. And with that there is a small bit of resentment because that's essentially what I want to be doing. Then I would say to you, like, it is time for you to look about taking someone in and taking over a lot of that workload for you. So that would be my point in terms of like when the time feels right. It's like when you almost feel like, yeah, I can see the business isn't evolving at a point, and it's almost getting me feeling a certain way about the coaching side of things that isn't making me enjoy it as much because that's ultimately taking away from the vision of where I want to go. Yeah. And then in terms of like actually looking for someone to hire, I suppose I can only say this from personal experience, and that's literally, so this is nothing theory. I suppose anything I tell you is in theory, it's all from experience. I think if you get someone internally as like, if someone comes to your mind, their client, and they could be good for the position, like I would be like really like looking at that person. I think that's a great place to start. So even for my own fitness business, we hired 4 coaches in total. 3 coaches all came internally as a client, and 1 coach came externally. And the one who came externally is the only one who didn't work. And I don't think that's a coincidence. So when someone's working as a client under you, they know your brand, they know your philosophy, they know your values, and they've bought into you already. So if you think there's someone who could be a good fit as a coach, for them to kind of come on board, the way they'll look up to you, the respect they'll have for you, they'll have very similar values to you. Yeah, it can be like a great fit from that perspective.
I think, yeah. So the one thing I would consider, and it straight away comes to mind, is the public's perception now of me not just being Lee, who's the coach, and that's a team. Because in my mind, there's a downside to that. Oh, I just want to work with him, and I know that can be an advantage in terms of sales.
Yeah.
But from the perception of how you integrate the coach into the business, do you have any tips on how you go about that from a sales point of view of someone that comes in the door and wants to work with you? Do you separate the coach to you? Because I know some people would say, okay, it's this much to work with me, this much to work with my coach, or do you keep it as a we're going to coach you, like, you know, you're under both of us, or do you make some disparity between the two of you to drive up a price point? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Question. So are you finding, in terms of, is the way you look at it, I feel people will be less inclined to want to work with me when it's not just me, when it's more of like a team aspect?
Yeah.
Is that
yeah, you know, the way, like, I would just think, why did I want to work with you? Because I know it's just Conor.
Yeah.
You know, that was for me important because
100%.
I knew you personally. I knew I'd be dealing with you personally. I knew it was just me and you back and forth. Now, if I knew you had a team, would I have been a little bit more skeptical? Probably, yeah. So how do you get around that perception? Or is that just a natural thing that people will have, and that will take care of itself in different ways? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. Really good question. So the one thing I would say, I think when people trust you and you have someone working for them, they'll say like, okay, he or she must be good because they're working for Lee. So that's something that I found a lot when my own fitness business accomplished was, even if people couldn't work with us, they're like, oh, I'm sure the coach is really good, which obviously they are, because they're like, I know you'd only hire people who are really good. So that'll be one thing. Two, I think it will almost be there's probably like a period of time where there's that transition period. But before you know it, people won't see Lee the coach. They'll see like the brand that you are. So it's almost going to be a period of time where people will get on a call and they won't eat. You'll eventually have it where people are getting on a call, maybe with you, maybe not, and they don't even know you personally. They know the brand name. And that's going to put you at a really, really powerful position if you want your business to be as big as possible and if you want to go as the CEO. So if you're on a sales call with someone and they don't actually even know you and they're like, oh yeah, like heard great things about like the team, whatever, like that's a great position for you to be in. It could be even a personal choice for you where you see people who, let's say people who you might not like know closely, you might I'm going to kind of keep coaching with those people. But I know in terms of the way that we're going through ads, there's going to be actually more and more people coming onto the page that don't know me personally. They got attracted in, but they see me as like this head of the business. And they probably wouldn't even think they're working with me with the way things are going. So I would be thinking all the new kind of leads you're getting in through ads, once they don't know you as Lee of before, like people maybe who know you personally would, I would use that as an advantage. So on a call, it's just going to be saying we. If they can ask you, like, you know, they may ask you on a call, like, am I working with you directly? You could be like, oh, like there is an option to work with me, or there's an option to work with one of my team. If you wanted to stay away from that and you had someone on a call and you said, I just have like one price point I want to go in on, but I actually don't want to like directly coach them. The way I look at it would be like, oh, like the whole coaching system and the whole frameworks, it's all done by me. So like, of course, you're going to be coached by me. The only difference is you'll just have an accountability coach who isn't me. So we have team meetings a few times a week. I'll be kind of like keeping up to date with your progress. As I said, all the plans, all the frameworks have been built by me, but it will just be my success coach name who will be doing like your accountability and speaking to you directly. So that would be kind of a way of getting across that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Makes sense. Okay, cool. So that's in terms of like coach hire. How have you found, let's say in terms of like the VA that you have in place now, in terms of like, would you see that something in its current position with, and like I know they're really good, that they've been smashing it for you. So I know in terms of how they've been performing for you is good. Would you feel like, okay, if I start running a lot of ads, getting a lot of messages in, is that something you feel would need to maybe be adjusted? Not in terms of personnel, but in terms of maybe how their time's being positioned or having someone else in place. Like, what's your thoughts there?
Yeah, so that's actually what I wanted to ask you about. So I think one of the biggest changes that you got me to implement was bringing on the VA to work and manage DMs, book calls, etc. And that's been huge for the business, really, because I said one thing I wanted was leads. I wanted to look at the calendar and there's calls booked, and we came up with a system that did exactly that. And I think like that, so okay, if we're looking at it from a point of view taking 20 to 50, is it a case of I just get that system I have with my VA doing more, and how do I do that? Is it a case of I need to free up poor time? Do I need to hire another one? And if I was to do it another one, what way would we do it?
Yeah, okay. Can you just remind me in terms of like how many hours a day?
So my VA currently is working 5 days a week, 2 hours a day, sending 35 DMs a day.
Monday to Friday.
Basically, and managing booking calls.
Okay, so this is actually a huge area we can improve on. 2 hours a day. And she sends 35
outbound.
outbound. Okay. Yeah, like to be honest, you with this structure, like doing plus 20 is like huge. And I think even more so for me, it just shows like the potential of like where we have to go with it. So, and can you let me know what you, okay, you don't have to let me know what you pay her. Do you have a commission structure? Or is it just set? It's just set.
The set price, yeah.
Yeah, set price. Okay, cool. Okay, so if I was looking from an ideal world for you, the way I would change that. So this is kind of current process in place. One thing I want to touch on, which is what a lot of people not have wrong, but it's something they're kind of missing out on. When you have like a really good setter in place, which you do, I think when they're doing the initial outbound, it's a waste of their time, essentially. I feel that initial outbound messaging can be done not by anyone, but by someone who's not as skilled as them. And you can kind of, one, save money, but two, free up time for your setter to make you more money. So step one, what I would do for you in this scenario would be, we're actually going to start calling current VA setter. So for step one, I would get a VA that just does outbound. And this is something like cheap. This could be like $7 an hour. And what I would do is actually increase the amount of messaging you're doing. So you have two accounts as well. You have personal and you have the coaching page. Yeah. So what I would start doing, you're currently doing 35 on one. On that one, I would, for the time being, increase it to 60. We could even go higher, 60 outbound. And then on the new profile, I'd add in 35 there. And this is something you could keep increasing to about like, I know people who do 100, I think like 80 on accounts is good mark, but if you have room to push to 100, you could. So I think about like 60, 35. So just that alone, Lee, you're going from sending 35 messages a day to sending 95. Do you know, that in itself is going to scale things. So that's one. But secondly, what's important here is now the setter who's in place now doesn't have to worry about that. And they can say, okay, for all the time that I'm in the business, I'm just doing replies and doing the higher skill stuff. So in terms of like setters' performance, in terms of the ability to book more calls and focus on that, it's going to be huge. So step one, VA outbound. Step two, I would promote her to like a setter role, and just doing replies and maybe like follow-ups. She'll be kind of like doing all the follow-ups. Okay, so you currently have her doing 2 hours a day. Depending on how busy your account is, what I would love for you to do is have someone where they're kind of like managing your account throughout the day. So it doesn't mean if they're like in your account full time, that there's literally 8 hours of work in your account to do. For the time being, there probably won't be. But is there, whether it's this person, whether it's someone else, that can kind of like manage your account across the day? So it's like maybe it's only 2 hours of actual work, but could that 2 hours of actual work be put into 20 minutes? Like 6 times a day. So could it move, like if we're keeping at 2 hours, 20 mins by 6 times a day? Eventually, what I would say to you is you'll have someone full-time. Like if you're doing like 50K a month, even 30, 35, I would nearly want someone in your account all the time. I'm not saying it's something you have to do right now, but if we just use your current setter's time more wisely, we remove the outbound, the 2 hours a day, we don't have a block, because if we have a block, we're going to be stuck at replies. Instead, we move that down and we kind of separate that across the day. So she's consistently getting to replies. And the third thing I would say to you is changing the structure of it. So I would have base and commission. So I usually think a commission number that's good would be about like 5% of what you make on a call. So why I think this is important for you is if you have a setter in your business who's an A player and is like booking calls and is relentless, sometimes we get lucky and you could just get someone who's like that and doesn't need to be incentivized more. But for them to keep up that and like really want your business to drive as much as you do, another incentive helps a lot. So from her perspective here, it's like, okay, if Lee did 22K last month, or if he did 10K last month, I'm still getting paid. It's not a huge difference to me. Okay, I'm happy for him. Want him doing well. I want to keep my job with him, but it doesn't make a huge difference. Whereas if that set price maybe goes down a small bit, depending on where that's at, we do that. So base like a set price, but we add in commission of what they do. Now there's a complete change in their want for you to succeed like you do. And from your perspective, it's like, I'm not actually losing. Okay, at the end of the month, if I'm giving them a good amount of commission, I know I've made a lot of money as well. So like that's the way I would see it. And basically I'd only do what you make on a call. So if you did a 1200, they would get 60 of that. So they get 5%. But if you put someone on a 250 per month, they would only get 1250 of the initial payment. They would never get any future ones. So I would keep it quite simple. I'd just be like, just cash collected on the call. Yeah, any questions with that?
No, that makes a lot of sense, to be fair. So like we said, we looked at the amount of DMs that were happening based off the 35 outbound.
Yeah.
How many calls were being booked based off the amount of DMs. And like you said, yeah, it could just be a case of structuring everything in a way where we can just double those numbers.
100%. And what I would say to you, because you, I know your setter, like we've talked about the setter you have, they're actually really good. So it's like, it's just a waste doing that to me. It's like, okay, let's get someone else in to do this, free up their time. Let's also make the times they come into the business a bit more as well. Think about it from this perspective. If we put in the commission part of it, the 2 hours a day, they might actually want it a bit more. So let's say their 2 hours is up, but they have a warm lead in the DMs. They're like, hey, if they say, like, I know I'm getting commission off this, so I might stay in the Count Extra, you know, they might do a bit more. So I think if you literally change this and we did nothing else, like you're gonna scale alone with just this. And then the other thing we have to take into account, going back to the ads point of view, we're not taking into account inbound. So if we're running a messenger ad for the free guide, you might be doing 60 outbound, 35 outbound on profile 2, and there may be like 10 inbound coming in. So like, hey, we've gone from 35 to 105. Now my setter is just focusing on replies, and I have a VA kind of doing a lot of that heavy lifting.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, sweet. Then in terms of kind of final point I wanted to talk on, just if you kind of got to a point in the business where, obviously you being the face of the business, like building a team, you might see, especially as well when it comes to like, you might feel you like doing sales calls now because people are working with you, but you might get to a point, which definitely happens, where, okay, I have a team, I don't want to do any of the coaching. And what I'm finding is when I'm doing the sales call myself, they're all kind of coming to me. So maybe I need to step myself out of the kind of sales role and put someone else in there. Is that something you've considered?
Yeah, like I know I've talked with a few people before about hiring like maybe closers, or they have people that do their calls for them. But again, it's like, for me, it's a timing thing.
Yeah.
When would be the right time, and how would I make that decision to hire someone that would be like a closer?
Yeah. So I think ultimately, like what I would say is, like, you will make your business the most amount of money. So I think that's like the first thing. Sometimes people will think they'll get a closer and they'll do better than they would, unless you're really not good at sales, which definitely isn't the case with you. Like, your percentage will lower. So let's say you're getting about, you're kind of close over 80%, really, like you have. If you got a closer in and they're doing 50, 60%, obviously it's depending on the price point, but if they're doing like a 50, 60% closing rate, in my eyes, they're doing a good job. So like, you might have to say like, okay, my closing rate will take a bit of a hit, but then it's like, what do you value? So if you value more of your time, and it's you putting more time into your VA and putting more time into lead gen, putting more time into content, is that going to actually make more calls booked and make more money, which then it's worth the lower percentage. So that's the first thing I'd look at it. If you kind of found maybe your business, kind of similar to coaching part of it, like if you felt like, hey, I'm spending all my time on calls, if I have a coach, they're slacking, the lead gen team slacking, like something has to change. Our second point of view would be, you literally, from a standard of life and way of living, which I think is important as well. It's not just about making money, it's you living a life you want to live. If you felt like, geez, I just feel like all across the week I'm just on calls all day and I just want that to stop, that would be another time when you'd look to potentially bring someone in. And the main way I would, I suppose, assess kind of closer in terms of like their performance is obviously going to be in terms of their closing rate, but as well it's going to be like cash collected versus cash contracted. So we talked before when we met earlier today, you kind of saying how good you've been in terms of like collecting upfront payments. So you might get a closer in, and not only do you feel like their closing percentage might be fine, but you're like, hey, like the business isn't generating the same amount of money. Let's say if they took 3 people on a monthly of $250 a pop and they've agreed to 6 months, so they've only collected for you $750, but they've actually contracted $4,500. So it's like, okay, you could be like, when I'm on the calls, that would probably be like 4,000-ish. Now we're only getting $750 and we're kind of contracting that amount. So it's you kind of working with your closer on, okay, how can I work with getting them to be better in terms of taking more money on the call? Is that changing the offer? Is that changing how they position the offer, etc.? And then if let's kind of look into the CEO role of you and saying, okay, I'm managing the lead gen team, I'm managing the closer, I've just been used to doing all the work. So how do I kind of like manage things like that? The way I'd say that to you, if the closer does an end of day report for you, which we have the setter doing. So if we're getting like an EOD from the closer, and let's say if he had 4 scheduled calls and 2 showed up, for the 2 that didn't show up, I'd be like, okay, I want to actually see the closer. Did you send them a reminder? Show me what the reminder was. Okay, for your setter, show me the conversation that this person booked in. I want to see the messaging. So now you're pulling the strings in the background where, as the business owner, as the CEO, instead of you in the deep end, you've taken a step back and you're like, okay, I'm just managing things. So I need the end of the day report from the setter. I need the end of the day report from the closer. Okay, I see that end of the day report with a 50% show up rate. This is now, if this is a consistent, let's say for a few weeks, it used to be 75%, you're going to see a drop in the business. But this is things that's going to happen when you scale, because we're putting more money into ads, call bookings are going up, different people in the team. For you, when you're a CEO, the biggest thing you're going to be doing is problem solving. So let's say if it's 50% show up rate, how you would look at that would be like, okay, I need to go back, as I said, and see the messages the setter sent. Did they book them in too quickly? Did the closer not do a good enough reminder, etc. So that's kind of on from, if you get a closer and you're like, okay, what the hell will I be doing? That's kind of essentially what you're going to be doing. You're going to be looking at the end of the day report, seeing what the problems are and how you can fix them in the background.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I think that's the direction of travel that I want to go in anyway.
Yeah.
So it's always like, how do you bridge the gaps?
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's the biggest thing. I think everything we went through today is literally all you need. Like, I think you doing plus 20K a month, completely organic, you being the only coach. When we look through the ads, when we look through hiring the coach, when we look through changing the lead gen structure, and eventually if that's you kind of just like looking at end of the day reports for your team, like you have everything in it to get there. So that's pretty much it in terms of like what I have to say. Is there any kind of questions on your mind? Are you good or?
No, I think that pretty much covered most things that I wanted to ask about. Yeah. But like I said, I think that's the direction of travel that the business is going in, and where I see it going. Mm-hmm. And as we touched on, it's just like those are the pillars, I think, of how you take it from where it is now to an organization, a company, really, which is what it is.
100%.
Yeah,
and that's the biggest thing for you. It's just you moving to that next direction of like, okay, I've done this as like a one-man band as Lee. How do I now step into like the CEO, the business owner role? And like that doesn't come overnight, and you don't want it to come overnight. Like you still have ambitions to do yourself. But I think if you keep these things in place, and I think just most importantly for you, because I know, as I said, you're someone who has like a very high standard. So I think for you kind of maybe trusting people to work inside your business could be tough for you. I think it's just you obviously getting the right people behind you, but as well, just like remembering what the vision is for you. And it's like, okay, if I can be impacting 3-4x amount of people around the world, then I know having this team is a necessity to do that.
Yeah, I think when I've been to like a scaling kind of seminar before, and I think the one thing that I looked at the time and felt, I was a bit unsure, was this, it was very sales and numbers orientated, and I felt like a resistance from myself straight away at that idea of, is that going away from the values that I have as a business in terms of I want to provide a certain level of coaching, I want to provide a certain service.
Yeah.
And that's where I was always a bit like, I don't want to get too sales or business orientated, but as you said, the more I can scale it, the more people I can impact. 100%. So just dissociating from that.
100%. And I think as well, it's like your relationship with money and how you see it. So maybe people might perceive that in a specific way. For me, I'd feel like they probably just have like a bad relationship with money or how they see it. Like for you, I would say like, okay, because at the end of the day, like your life hasn't changed much since you got to plus 20, because it's not about the money for you.
Yeah.
Like it's about impact. It's about you continually making progress. So I would see you making more money as your brand becoming more powerful and you helping more people. Like it's the exact same as me. Everything I've done to earn the money I have so far has been like to directly help people, which is so fucking cool.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? So it's like you should be proud of yourself for like when the money keeps going up to be like, hey, this is me helping more and more people. And even to the point of view of like, let's say if you were doing it for free, none of them would have got help because none of them would have actually followed through and took it seriously. Yeah. So like even see you, because sometimes people have a struggle with like charging people money and stuff. Like I would say like that money is going to be spent either way. I know the service I give, I know the life change that people will get from working with me. So like I want them to see it's a lot of money to work with me. I want to be able to get on a sales call and be really good at asking difficult questions, because I know how many people are not moving forward. I know how many people are stuck in the same place, never reaching their full potential. So if I got on a call being like, oh, I don't like sales and I'm not going to sell to this person, that person's going to probably stay the same forever. But if you have the ability to know, okay, I know if I ask them this question and that question, they'll actually have a perspective and a mindset like, okay, this is something I need to do. They come on board your program, they pay you a decent amount of money, which is an expense for them, but now they take it really seriously. Guess what? 6 months down the line, they're on your Instagram page, they have a testimonial saying, you've completely changed my life. So I think when we look at sales, when we look at money, especially in the fitness space, it's like, okay, but let's look at actually what's happening to the people who are paying that money.
Yeah, and I think that's the most prevalent point of it, because, you know, I've said to you, the biggest game changer for me was being able to get bigger upfront payments and commitments. But the number one thing that was associated with that was not, oh yeah, it's more money up front, which is great for the business, but it's actually, I have this individual locked in now, and I know I can create the impact I want because they're in this for 6 months, and I'm going to keep them there. So the chance of the result is a lot stronger. 100%. And I think that's where I've shifted my perspective a little bit, because I used to be a little bit like, oh, I don't want to be too salesy, I don't want to be too this, but it's actually, like you said, it's, well, don't forget what you're selling.
100%.
You know, and if you're confident in what you're selling, which I am, because I know my values, as a coach, I know how meticulous I am with how I coach. It's like, well, they're getting something really good and powerful for what they're paying for. So I think that's, again, that's probably something that I would imagine a lot of other coaches might struggle with at certain stages of their coaching journey. Because when I started this out, I was the physio coach helping people with injuries, and now I'm the physio coach who helps people with physique development, with fat loss, with injuries, with the full spectrum.
Yeah.
So I think, and again, my business is only a year and a half old.
And what would you say is, like, let's say, like, taking it back to that Lee compared to like Lee of today, what would you say is like maybe the biggest change you've had to have, or even subconsciously had, like from a mindset perspective, to have like the growth that you've had?
I think, I think it was a big part of it was the willingness to invest in a business mentor, and, you know, to be humble enough to know that, okay, in order to get to where I wanted to get to, there's a lot of information I don't have. Key information that's going to help me get there. And my perspective was, I can get this to 10K months myself, and I'm going to do it myself before I even think of anyone. And I hit that number. And then it took a bit of a dip. And that's when I was like, right, now was probably the time to bring on a business mentor. And it's like, I put it back to people that sign up to be coached by me that know how to train. But there's levels to it. There's levels to everything. And I think I reached a certain level, and I started to, again, be more introspective in how I was thinking, like, right, I'm probably the only barrier here to the business growth in my own perceptions, my own limiting beliefs. And that's a lot of people's reasons for not getting in shape or not getting in a certain level of condition. And I just looked at that and said, well, apply that to what you need to do next, which is probably bring on a business mentor who has the social proof, who's done that at that level with his own business and with his own mentorship. And that's kind of what it was. I think that was the biggest mindset shift for me, was the willingness to go back and invest in myself from that side of things, the business side of things. I've done it from the physique development for myself. I've gotten the shape. I think it coincided really with me getting in the best shape in my life was through hiring a coach. And I knew to get me business to where I wanted to get it to, it was going to be through hiring a coach.
And I think that even comes to like confidence, because I think you'd probably agree, even for like you with fitness coaching, people who would say they don't need a coach are probably people who have a wall up for some reason, in terms of like, they're kind of like, they don't want you to kind of see into maybe like something that they're struggling with. I think two things, confidence for you. So that backs you confidence to say, I have a thing that I can say, like, yeah, look, I'm at a point where I'm confident enough to say, like, if I work with someone, things will improve and it's something that I need. And then secondly, it's like, okay, because I remember us on the initial call, I was like, this was a lot of money to invest, and you were like, shit, do I do it? And you went for it. So it's like you had that confidence, one in me, but like most importantly in yourself, to say, like, this is a lot of money I have to essentially part ways with, which is the same with fitness. But I am not making a decision on Lee of today, because Lee of today will keep that money in the pocket. I'm seeing Lee 4, 5, 6 months in the future. What does that Lee look like? And how I want that Lee to look, what decision would he make today? And I think that's like so important. It's like you made a decision that day of like, not your current comforts, but like, no, I can see the person I want to be, and I know I'm not there right now, and this is what can kind of get me there.
I think that's huge. Like, that's such a from a mindset shift, that's a powerful place to be, and there's a risk associated with that, because your own insecurities are probably why you are where you are. For a lot of people, it's about, we all have this vision of who do I want to be in life, where do I want to go, what direction of travel do I want to see myself go in, and there's certain actions that need to be taken in order to get there. And I even have this with people on calls with me, and have to make an upfront payment or an investment. And I refer back to that call that we had, and I was like, it was a big investment into my business, and it was scary, but I knew that was the next step in order to get to where I needed to be, because we often fool ourselves thinking I can just get there myself. I'll just do it myself. As you kind of said, like, I'll get to 15K first, Con, and then I'll be back to you. A year later, I might have not heard from you, because it's like that still didn't happen. So it's like you just have to
the bullet. But no, you've smashed it. I'm excited for what's next.
Yeah, 100%, man.